Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a fascinating psychological battle. It's one that happens inside your own mind every single time someone tells you to do something that you were literally just about to do anyway. We're going to explore the hidden architecture of human motivation, drawing from some deeply researched socioeconomic theories and decentralized protocol models, just to understand how our desire to help gets so easily hijacked. We often think of motivation as this simple battery that just needs charging, but as we'll see, it's actually an incredibly complex negotiation of power.
Ask yourself this: why does a voluntary gift suddenly feel like slavery the absolute second it becomes an obligation? The answer really isn't just a matter of simple annoyance. It actually reveals a desperate defensive war for your own survival and autonomy. We usually assume that people who suddenly refuse to help are just being uncooperative or moody, right? But the sources we're unpacking today suggest something entirely different. They show that an internal biological mechanism is being violently triggered.
Picture this highly relatable scenario. You're just about to happily wash the dishes. Your movements are spontaneous, your mindset is completely light, and you're feeling genuinely helpful. But suddenly, from the other room, someone yells, "Hey, don't forget to wash those dishes." You freeze. Bam, motivation gone. Instantly evaporates, and this dark, burning resentment just takes over. You had even aggressively sit back down on the sofa and protest. So what just happened in your brain? Why did your internal drive shut down so completely?
Section 1. The reactance response.
Psychologists actually have a name for this sudden shift. They call it psychological reactance. And it's so crucial to understand that this mechanism proves you aren't just being lazy or apathetic. Your brain is actively fighting to protect its sovereignty. The moment your freedom is threatened, your mind pulls the emergency brake. It's an involuntary reflex to assert that you are still the one in control of your own actions. Honestly, without this defense mechanism, we'd be entirely susceptible to total subjugation.
When someone demands you do what you were already going to do, it's literally a form of psychological theft. They steal two specific things from you. First, they steal your credit. What was originally your internal self-discipline or your genuine kindness is abruptly relabeled by the other person as mere obedience. Second, they steal your freedom. They forcefully transform your voluntary, independent choice into a mandatory debt. In a split second, you're no longer giving a gift, you're paying a tax.
Section 2. Gift versus demanded right.
There is this ultimate, profound boundary in the human soul, perfectly captured by this idea. I can die for you, but you cannot make me die for you. When I choose to sacrifice for someone, it's a divine act of free will. It comes from a place of absolute sovereignty, where I am the master of my own fate. But the very second you demand that sacrifice as your inherent right, the entire dynamic collapses.
So, the crucial point here is that true mutual aid requires the absolute right to say no. When you give a voluntary gift, you are acting as a partner, a master of your own fate operating from a place of real strength. But if someone demands your help as a right, that trusted partner instantly transforms into a predator. Without the power to refuse, every act of help is tainted by the stench of exploitation. You basically become a mere tool, just a stepping stone for someone else's ends.
Section 3. The ordering machine.
Now, we usually see this reactance most clearly with those closest to us because, well, that's where we feel safe enough to drop our masks. But our source analysis shows that modern society has completely weaponized this dynamic. We've turned the world into a giant ordering machine, built on this massive culture of entitlement, where those being helped desperately use money or moral status to hide their utter physical dependence on the actual labor of others.
In Western service industries especially, we see this perfectly manifested in the customer is always right or customer is God trap. This is a structural mechanism of spiritual theft. By paying a few dollars, a customer essentially buys the right to feel superior. They are totally physically dependent on a service worker to eat or for a clean environment, yet this dependence is repackaged as high status, effectively defining the helper as lesser. It's a modern twist on the master-slave dialectic. The buyer masquerades as independent while devouring the helper's autonomy, viewing the worker's time not as a collaboration but as purchased property.
And this dynamic right here is exactly why modern jobs burn us out so completely. We aren't just physically tired from the labor itself, we are spiritually drained from the forced subservience. Our brains are locked in a constant, low-level state of psychological reactance because our autonomy is relentlessly being devoured by people who think our time belongs to them simply because they hold the collar of money. It is an incredibly exhausting way to live.
Section 4. The inviolable sphere.
So, how do we fix this giant ordering machine? The sources point to a systemic solution found in the Decentralized Social Protocol.
It requires building a literal firewall for the soul, known as the inviolable sphere. This is a designated domain where your personal time, your core beliefs, and your cognitive sovereignty are absolutely sacred. No system, no corporate boss, and no algorithmic manager has the right to assume you're permanently on standby.
The protocol cleanly separates human existence into two distinct zones. On one hand, you have the coordinate sphere. That's where we manage shared resources, things like energy grids and ecological capacity, by transparent, temporary invitation. But the core of it all is the inviolable sphere. This zone remains completely immune to forced algorithmic scheduling. Your free time cannot be voted away by a majority, and it certainly cannot be conscripted by a corporate entity. The protocol respects your absolute individual autonomy.
In this radically new architecture, the way work happens shifts fundamentally. All public responsibilities are issued as transparent invitations, never summons. The system displays a data-driven deficit, and you fulfill a task because you verified for yourself that the community needs it for mutual survival. By shifting from a coercive order to a voluntary invitation, the system bypasses psychological reactance entirely. It naturally taps into our deep evolutionary drive for mutual aid.
Section 5. Return to self.
When we successfully move from a society built on fearing consequences, like poverty, bad grades, or social exile, to one built on understanding our own intrinsic needs, the fundamental nature of education changes forever. Traditional systems teach us how to survive the consequences of not obeying, but a truly decentralized, sovereign system uses education to help us discover what we actually need and who we actually are. It completely replaces obedience with self-discovery.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought today. When you are no longer coerced by the fear of survival, and when your desire to help is no longer poisoned by someone else's entitlement, what will you finally be free to discover about yourself? If society stopped telling you how to live, what would you choose to create? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions, and we'll see you next time.